Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of All About Sports, the podcast. You're joined by your hosts Aniket, Mazhar, Shubham, and myself, Rishabh. But today again, we have a very special guest. We're joined today by Leo Tomatsu. Leo is really a multi-sport athlete. He started off with baseball. He started playing baseball in the US when he was in elementary school. He then moved on to playing in a divisional conference when he was in middle school, playing both in the outfield and then batting at second or sixth, and was co-captain. He also played basketball, started in middle school, played AAU basketball in high school in a few varsity games while he was a sophomore. Unfortunately, due to an injury, he had to stop playing organized basketball. And then into, I think, the third sport that he's also been involved in, which I think is the most interesting to us because we know the least about it, is skiing and snowboarding. So, Leo, you started skiing when you were about 5 years old. You switched to snowboarding in the fifth grade, and you've basically been going at it. You even kind of you've gone snowboarding in Japan and the East Coast, as well as the East Coast of US and Canada. You've been to Hokkaido. You've also been a snowboard instructor for a while, teaching kids how to snowboard. So firstly, Leo, awesome to have you on board. Really excited to talk to you about sports. Like we said, we don't know as much about, want to learn more about. Let me start off by A, asking how you're doing, and B, when's the last time you went snowboarding?
Well, first off, thank you for the kind introduction. That was probably the best introduction I've ever gotten, so that was cool. And yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm feeling good. It's a Sunday. Pretty warm day. It's spring. Can't complain. Baseball is back and going. I'm watching the MLB and everything. So yeah, I'm good. Yeah, how's everyone doing?
We're all in the same boat. I think whichever sport, whether it's baseball or some sport, it's the weekends are time to kind of catch up on whatever sport is going on, and there's usually something on. So we've been catching up with probably football today and
Hmm.
a bit a bit during the week. But let me start off. Let me start off with going a little bit into your background into each of these sports, Leo. So maybe let's maybe talk a little bit about baseball and snowboarding specifically. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what got you excited about these sports? What got you into it? Kind of how you got started, because they're not typically sports that especially sporting is not something you can just go to a playground and do.
So for me, as a child, like uh, you know, 3 years old, 4 years old, I think my dad got me into basically everything. He bought me a baseball mitt. He taught me how to throw a baseball. He taught me how to ski. So it was more of like on the weekends, I would spend time with my dad doing these things. And then as I grew older, I would start going to school. My parents unwillingly. When I was a kid, I wasn't really outgo. I was outgoing, but I didn't like starting new things. But my parents put me on baseball teams, soccer teams, and whatnot. But I feel like when I was younger, I really liked baseball. And I think when it comes to almost anything that I did when I was younger, I always looked up to like a baseball star or a snowboard star or a ski star. But for me, Hideki Matsumoto, or he was a Japanese baseball player on the Yankees that came up, and
Okay.
his nickname was Godzilla, right? And me being a Japanese kid living in the U.S., I instantly got that nickname, which really helped me like making friends playing baseball, and they were like, "Oh, Godzilla, he's so cool and everything. He's on the Yankees now." So I think that like further enforced me liking sports and making friends and everything. So that's my background. I like sports because one, my dad taught me. So back then I didn't really realize it was important, but now, there's more significance behind that. And yeah, I just made friends playing it. So that's why I like it.
Leo, Leo, you mentioned earlier that you switched over from skiing to snowboarding, right?
Mhm.
So other than the cool quotient of snowboarding, what what prompted you? Is there any other prompt? And second of all, since you've done both, do you want to elaborate on how different they are? Because I mean, the kind of activities you do on both of them seems slightly different. Um, you know, Alpine skiing versus a half pipe is really different. So, like, if you want to elaborate on what you found were the differences, because you switched over fairly early, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I started off skiing, and I think skiing is easier to start off with. So that's the first difference is I think skiing is more intuitive. I don't know if a lot of people have been ice skating. I'm guessing not a lot. Maybe rollerblading, that might be more popular. But what I'm trying to get to is skiing is more intuitive because you're standing up straight and the direction that you're facing is the direction that you're going. It's kind of like running, but you now have things under your feet. So it's more intuitive that way. So that's one of the first differences I'd mention is it's easier to pick up skiing. So I think that's why my dad started me off with skiing. Another thing is snowboarding is relatively new compared to skiing. I think skiing people have been doing it for like since the 19. I'm gonna estimate like 40s or something. It's like an old sport, but snowboarding it's new. It's like if you try to snowboard in a lot of the European mountains, they don't allow snowboarders. They only have skiers. And I think a lot of that is due to snowboarding being a new sport. A lot of people who snowboard are younger. A lot of people who snowboard are less good per se. I would say a lot of snowboarders don't have control yet. I think it's so now talking about snowboarding. I think it's pretty hard to actually maintain control while snowboarding compared to skiing. With skiing, it's really easy to stop immediately. With snowboarding, it's harder to make that abrupt stop. You have to do some quick maneuvers and then stop. While skiing, you can just hit the brakes, if that makes sense. So snowboarding is harder to pick up, but once picked up, and I think this is the key difference between skiing and snowboarding, is skiing it's easier to pick up. Snowboarding it's harder to pick up because it's not intuitive, and I'll get to that later. But once you pick it up and once you get past the learning curve, there's more a creativity aspect to it. The way the sport is, it's similar to skateboarding where there's infinite amount of tricks of things you can do. I personally found Shaun White to be super cool. So that's why I changed. I thought him spinning around and doing all these things was just like out of this world, honestly. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And I had the nickname Tomato because Tomatsu, tomato. And his nickname was Flying Tomato. So naturally, I was like, oh, this is a sign. I should do this. But yeah, I really wanted to spin around, jump on rails, jump off jumps, and do those things. So that's why I switched.
I want to give you credit, Leo. You also, amongst the guests that we've had, have had the most unique nicknames of any athletes that we've had on. These are pretty unique. These are pretty, but that's impressive.
So Leo, I know you mentioned that you suffered a torn ACL, which affected your snowboarding, and till to date it has affected you as well in somewhat of a way. Firstly, have you started snowboarding again? And secondly, you also told me that you did not realize that you had broken your knee at a particular point in time, and you went boarding, and that's when you got to know that, oh, I have a broken knee.
Yeah.
How on earth did you manage that? So just take us through that. And also, if you have started snowboarding, one major question that everyone has is, given how dangerous, I don't want to use the word dangerous, but how
That's fair.
let's say a bit more prone to accidents it is, do you have a bit of apprehensions when, let's say, you are doing certain turns or certain jumps, or has that created a sort of nervousness or a bit of anxiety when you are boarding?
Yeah, for sure. So about the injury, that it's funny. The injury came from basketball. I still remember the move. So I had this since I was little. I like this player named Derrick Rose. He was super quick. Funny enough, he had the same exact injury I did, and I watched how he played. So, fair enough. I I followed how he played, and I played exactly the way he played. I got injured the way he got injured. Anyway,
Ouch.
yeah, it was pretty painful. So I had numerous issues with my ankle as well playing basketball. So I thought I just like rolled it or something. And I remember this was during school. So that day, I remember after that, I was like screaming. Everyone thought I died. It was funny. Everyone, what the hell happened? And after like 10 minutes after I calmed down, one of the basketball players mentioned that I might have torn my ACL. And I'm like, I'm probably fine. If I tore my ACL, I feel like it'll hurt more or something like that. I thought I just like sprained it or something. When I got hurt, it was at like the campus basketball field, and the person that I was speaking to was like, "Oh, you're probably fine." So I was like, "Okay, I'm probably fine." And like 2 weeks after, my injury, I was like walking somewhat normal again. So I thought I was fine. I started noticing my knee was weird when I was I used to use a skateboard to get around campus because I went to Boston and it's really just like a really long school unnecessarily. It's like 2 kilometers or something. So I used to use a skateboard, and when I tried to do like a jump trick or something, and when I used my right leg to press, they call it press or whatever, ollie, or it would like lock up, and I thought that was weird. And I tried to play basketball again after like 6 months, and my knee would lock up, and I thought that was weird. And pretty dumb. So after like a year, one of my friends was like, "Hey, you want to go snowboarding? I heard you snowboard." I was like, "Yeah," and I went snowboarding. It was fine the first few, like during the day, it was fine, and during the afternoon, after we ate lunch, my knee would just lock up, and every time it locked up, it was pretty painful, I would say. But I thought it's just I didn't think of it much. I don't know why. I don't know why. I never thought that I tore my ACL, which is pretty strange. And then after I graduated, I went to I mentioned it to my parents, like my knee locks up. I didn't really mention it. I thought it was nothing because 5-10 minutes later it's fine. And they're like, "Guys, we should probably check on that." Went to the doctor, and doctor was telling me, "Hey, your ACL, PCL, MCL, they're all torn." I'm like, "Oh, really? That's not great." And after that, I decided to get a surgery. So the main problem with the surgery I got is that there is a probability that I could rip those muscles again. It's more likely, and the way I prevent that is I train. I go to the gym to support all the muscles except that. So I improve my core, I improve my thigh muscle, I improve my calf, I improve every part of the body except my knee. So that's what I did, and that's what I continue to do today. My doctor did mention that I should be careful on I should not play basketball again. He told me that strictly. And spoken about snowboarding and surfing. Those are the two things I was into at that time. He told me I should be careful what I do. And during that time, before I hurt my knee, I was doing like pretty large jumps, where if I would fall off that jump, I would probably break my arm or something like that. So I thought to myself, maybe my days of trying tricks doing the half pipe days are over, but um, once I feel comfortable enough to just go down the mountain like I usually do, and maybe help some people get better at snowboarding, I can do that. So pivoting a little bit from my injury, now speaking about like the safety of snowboarding, again, I think it's really similar to riding a bicycle, not a motorcycle, a bicycle. Motorcycle, maybe that's dangerous, but I think with with a bicycle, you can, to some degree, control how fast you're going. You can control what terrain you're biking on, and it's always smart to wear a helmet, right? You see a lot of people in the city not wearing a helmet while riding a bicycle, but it's probably smarter to wear a helmet. And I would say if you're interested in winter sports, definitely wear a helmet. It's so easy to slip. You can just be walking around with a cup of coffee and then slip and hit your head on ice, and then you get a concussion. Like I've seen that happen to people. Luckily, I've had zero injuries on the snow. And I could share some tips and tricks, I guess, with this. If anyone's interested in snow sports, I think the first thing you do is wear a helmet. Some cool kids might not be wearing a helmet, but don't get influenced by those people. Wear a helmet. There's two benefits. One, you don't crack your head open. That's a pretty good one. Maybe three. I'm gonna make it three. Two, I think helmets are getting cool. When I was doing it, helmets were not cool. They were all bulky, but now they're better designs. And the third part is it keeps you warm. I think they keep you warmer than a knit hat. It actually, I think it keeps you warm. So if you're another thing about snow sports is you can be in the conditions of negative 30 degrees or negative 20 degrees. I've done that once in Canada. It was terrible, but I was not cold. Like everything was freezing. My mask was freezing. My gloves were freezing, but my head was fine. My head was great. So wear a helmet. And the second thing, and I'll stop here, is when you know you're gonna fall, which happens to everyone, even the best people. You don't want to fall on your hands. That's how you break your wrist. When you're falling over, you want to either land on your butt, which all over our butts are really well made. When you're falling, land on your butt. Or if you're falling frontwards forward, don't land on your neck. Don't land on your arms. How you tuck your arms in. When you're falling and you're like, oh God, I don't feel comfortable. It's human instinct to put your hands out and try to catch yourself. But that is how you break your wrist. And you don't want to do that. When you feel like you're falling forward while you're doing a snow sport, you don't want to put your hands out. You actually want to put your hands in and let your body absorb damage. And that's what I did. And I've gone off some pretty scary jumps and rails, and every time I'm like, oh, I'm about to fall, I just put my hands in. So like what I do is, I guess the Marvel Wakanda back when he does the X, like a visual cue. That's a good way to just do it. Just be like, tuck your arms in, and then you will not break your arms. And yeah, that's my two tricks. Well, helmet and tuck your arms in.
Leo, one thing that I'm interested to know about is what would be the barriers to entry for a sport like this? Mainly in terms of like, I would imagine a sport like this would be expensive in terms of buying the equipment, the gear. If someone just wants to take up a sport like snowboarding, what are the sort of costs that they're looking at in just buying the helmet or the board and the gear that you need?
Sure. So this depends on like a lot of things. But I could tell you what I did. What I recommend is so I think I recommend the first thing is just try the sport out, right? I would recommend just trying the sport out. Just rent for a day. I recommend renting. Obviously, you need the board, you need the boots. I highly recommend getting the helmet, and I also recommend renting out the snow equipment. So like the jackets, the pants, and I highly recommend getting good socks. I can't like 2 pairs of socks because oh my God, there are so many times where snow would get in my boots, my socks are cold. But wait a minute, if I go back, I have a second pair, and it just like changes your quality of life. So whatever, before you do anything, buy a good pair of socks because you will thank me later. Buy a good pair of socks. And then my second thing would be just try the sport out, rent it for a day. And with renting, there are some couple tricky things, but I could give you some information about it. So for a snowboard specifically, this applies to surfing and skating. There's a thing called a stance. So there are two stances. There's the regular and goofy, and this used to confuse me when I was younger. But if you're a right-handed person, more than likely you're a regular stance. If you're a left-handed person, more than likely you're a goofy stance. There's another way to test this, but it really only works if it happens to you unexpectedly. But I'll tell you anyway. This is what I do with like the kids I taught. Is you need two people. You need one person standing in front of you, another person standing behind you. And what you do, so I'm the instructor and there's like a student, right? That's the scenario. And I asked the student, close your eyes and just stand straight up tall, right? And they're standing tall. And then out of nowhere, I just pushed them enough where they either catch themselves with their leg. And this is the key point is when I push the student and then the student's left foot comes out first, then that person is a regular stance person. On the other hand, if the right hand comes out first, they're a goofy person. They're a goofy stance person. And this only works if they're like unexpectedly happens. And now, like, if you try to do it now, you're gonna like think about it, like, am I a left or right person? You know what I mean? But another way to think of it is, let's just say you need to jump over a hurdle. Which leg are you going to use? If you're using your left foot, then you're a regular stance. If you're a right foot, you're a goofy stance. And I did track, and I also jumped off for my left foot. I was a regular stance. But anyway, when you're renting out gear, just remember that regular and goofy stance. You're welcome. Because I got the wrong gear once and I had to go back and be like, sorry, I'm not a goofy, I'm a regular. And it's like, oh, okay. New people do this all the time. Well, now you won't do this. But anyway, so that's the first thing, is just trying out the sport. I would also recommend getting an instructor on your first day. Putting the gear together, like how to wear the boots, how to put the snowboard on, how to act on the slopes. Like, oh, and the daily rental, just a little tip on the costs. If you rent at the resort or the hotel, it is going to be more expensive than the little store 10 minutes out from the resort. The little store 10 minutes out from the resort, it's inconvenient, but they will give you more personal service. They'll probably know what they're doing, and it'll probably be cheaper. It's always good to help local business, yada, yada, yada. But once you get past that, I would recommend rent, before you buy, I'd recommend at least renting your board for a year. And this applies more to if you have a child that is interested in snow sports, because your child, I'm assuming, will grow. They'll be taller, and the length of your board is determined by how tall you are. So if if you're buying equipment for a 5-year-old, you can only use it for like a year or two. So like it'll make sense to rent one anyway. But if you're like serious about, I want to learn how to do this, I would recommend renting for a year. That's a pretty good way to do it. I'd recommend renting a board, a boot, and maybe a helmet. I would say buying your own goggles would be beneficial. And here's why. With snow sports, one of the main nuances was that I'm wearing glasses now, but if you wear glasses, you know what I mean. It gets foggy and you can't see anything in front of you. And with snow sports, that happens more often than not because you're in a cold environment, you're breathing out of your nose and mouth, and your goggles can be easily fogged up. You can't see in front of you, which is quite scary if you're snowboarding, it's blizzarding, your goggles are foggy, you can't see in front of it. Your goggles are so foggy that your goggles now have mists in it, and that mist is frozen, and now you wear your goggles, but you can't see in front of you. It turns into a big mess. So I would recommend buying your own goggles, and if you have the extra funds, maybe buying your own jacket might be pretty beneficial as well. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
So what's the total cost approximately, Leo, for renting for a year? Just the snowboard, for example, for a year.
I would say that's a hard question. But
let's say the basic ones for beginners, so not someone who's really experienced.
in USD, I would say expect at least 300 to 500 for half a year, maybe. Realistically, 500 to 700 for like a year rental. I would say it's rather expensive. It's pretty expensive. I'm not gonna lie to you, and the costs keep adding up more. Where a day trip at a resort could go up to $40 to $70 per day. So it's pretty expensive. There's like coupons, there's like season passes you can get to make it cheaper, but it is not the most cost-effective sport, I would say.
And Leo, you mentioned about the size of the board. Just out of curiosity, I'd like to know, does the size of a board lead to an advantage or a disadvantage? Like, is it like a bigger board can be advantageous as compared to a smaller board? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, totally. So in short, when you stand up, you want a board around your chin. That's like kind of like, how like baseball or maybe even cricket, there's a trick to determine what kind of bat size you want. For snowboarding, it's your chin. That's like an indicator of where you want it. And to get specific, the larger the board, the faster you go. The shorter the board, the more control you have. And that's like really broad, because snowboards can have, they're called cambers, right? So a snowboard looks flat in the beginning, but if you look at the minor details on the board, they're either a W shape or a V shape. And that also changes what you want to do. With a W shape, you have like a more of an all-around board where you can go fast and you can also do tricks. That's what I have. With a V-shaped board, that's more for tricks, jumps. That gives you the most, where it gives you the most pop when you apply pressure to your board, and that's how like people do tricks and stuff. But that's like another thing to look at. But I would say for beginners, somewhere around your chin is where you want the board to be. And for a little bit more advanced people, if you're looking into racing or going faster, a little bit bigger board would be better. If you're looking into doing tricks or having more control of your board, like sometimes I've ridden a larger board and it does feel like I don't have as much control. And if you want more control, a smaller board.
So Leo, now moving on to the other sport which you've played, you know, you've been into baseball also for a while. So one question I wanted to ask was, it kind of seems like it's hit a rough patch in the states in terms of popularity. The MLB had this project in India as well, where they tried to, you know, kind of garner eyeballs on the sport from India. So, what do you think is behind this kind of slump in baseball in the states?
Yeah, that's a fair question and a good question. And I honestly think that there there appears to be a slump in baseball in general because of MLB. So I think the problem is not the sport itself. Based on, so I live in New Jersey now, and if I it's baseball season now, and if I go on, I have a dog, and when I walk my dog near baseball parks, I always hear people playing, and around reasonable time, so like 3 p.m. to like 7 p.m. is usually when I walk. I usually hear people playing baseball, and that's like the little league, which is like the younger kids, or like the dad league, which are like adults playing. So I think that the general amount of people playing baseball may have decreased a little bit, but I still think it's still pretty popular, and arguably it's still like America's sport is what people term it. But I think the real problem lies in MLB itself. So like the MLB organization, I think a lot of people have a little bit of a distaste of MLB at this point, because quite simply put, they're a little bit of a corrupt organization. They always have some political thing going on. They always have money issues. They always have refs doing really weird stuff like that. And I think that really hurts the professional sport. And I think that's why it's hard for people to really support MLB in general. But I think people still watch it. I still watch it because I like the teams. I like the players. I follow players still. Like you, Darvish, big fan. There is a little bit of a problem with the MLB at the moment, and yeah, that's my honest opinion on why I think at least professional baseball is struggling a little bit.
Do you, Leo, do you also think the viewership has come down because, do you think it's because of all the reasons you mentioned, or do you think that now people just don't want to go out and maybe, I mean, yeah, of course, given the pandemic, there were no crowds. That's a different issue altogether. But even before that, we weren't seeing stadiums filling out fully. And do you think it's because of all the reasons you said, or also because 9 innings now seem too long?
Yeah,
And
so
scores.
yeah, I agree. So me personally, I like baseball because there are 9 innings. Because there's a beginning, middle, and end. And um, for an avid viewer, we enjoy the beginning, middle, and end. The fact that there are parts that are slow, and there's reasons why it's slow and stuff like that. But for like a new viewer, which understandably would rather watch a basketball. Some people say basketball games are boring. Maybe watch a soccer game, which is a little bit more exciting than a baseball game, and I think that's very understandable. But I do think that the viewership is dropping because, well, at least for baseball viewership, the commentating has differed a little bit. They used to be more fun. Now it's more analytical. The announcers have to be careful with what they say and stuff like that. So there's this whole like weird thing going on in baseball at the moment. I think that does, to me personally, I think that's what is hurting more than the nine inning itself.
So the reason why I asked that question, Leo, is because in cricket we have three formats now. So you have a case where you have the classical cricket, which is Test cricket, which goes on for 5 days. So it's 3 sessions per day, and it's basically an endurance test and a fitness test for the players. Then you have a shorter format, which is 50 overs, which basically goes on for half a day. Uh, and then you have the 20 overs, which is the hot new trend in cricket, so to speak, which is also the cash cow for the sport around the world. So that's why I was just asking that question to see if maybe having a shortened version in baseball, let's say a three maybe too short, maybe a 5 to 6 inning match would probably increase viewership and make the sport more exciting. For us personally, we're all suckers for the longest format of cricket. So we can understand where you are coming from for baseball as well with the 9 inning thing.
Yeah, also one thing that Mazhar brought up about cricket, I know for a fact that in the US they are making attempts for cricket as a sport to grow and be adopted on a wider scale. And I think they're also focusing on bringing in the major cricket league, which will be like sort of like the IPL, the Indian Premier League that happens here, like Mazhar mentioned, the T20 format, which is the cash cow and most exciting format. So just out of curiosity, I'd like to know the fact that cricket is making inroads in the USA and is slowly growing as a sport, do you think that could also potentially hamper baseball? Because there are some similarities to the sport. In obviously, cricket there's a bowler and baseball there's a pitcher, but there are like certain similarities in the way the game is played. And with T20, especially being so fast, being a 3 hour game and very, very exciting, and baseball being a longer game, do you think that can potentially hamper the sport?
I would not say it would hamper it. I would help. I would honestly think it will help it grow. I think baseball can help cricket grow. Cricket can help baseball grow. And I think there are two different entities, mainly because of the fan base. I think like baseball in general just has like a strong, like almost like cultural tradition. Almost it feels like it. I went through it. It's like if you have a boy or a girl, they will, and if they like sports, they when they're like 5, 6, 7, and 8, they will join a little league, um, and then once they're done with the little league, they'll join a traveling league and stuff like that. So like we kind of, well, me, I moved around a lot, but based on my experience, I think there's like a culture of growing up with baseball, and I'm guessing there's a similar thing with cricket in India as well. That being said, the U.S. now has a new sport called lacrosse. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's kind of like hockey, but running around without ice. And hockey and lacrosse, they're two similar sports, but they help each other. Why? Because they play in two different seasons, and hockey players usually play lacrosse, and lacrosse players usually play hockey. Similarly, I think cricket could do a similar thing. Who knows what happens, but baseball is like a spring sport, and I think it would be really hard to really overtake that. I don't see that happening, but if cricket could be a summer sport, then baseball players would most definitely play cricket in the summer, and cricket players can have the option to play baseball in the spring. And this is a quick note. In the U.S., sports are in a rotation. So there's a spring sport, there's a summer sport, there's a fall sport, so there's a winter sport. So I think that right now, yeah, spring sport is baseball, and there's not really like a sport that like use a bat and a ball during the summer. So maybe cricket can I played cricket, and it's definitely more fun. It's definitely more active than baseball. So I think cricket in the summertime kind of naturally fits into place. If hopefully that happens, that'd be cool.
So, Leo, I'm just for our viewers and our listeners, just curious to know what is the average speed of an MLB or an international baseball pitcher when it comes to throwing a fastball? What would be the average speed of, let's
Yeah.
say, yeah.
So a good baseball player, right? A good pitcher could throw around, and he's good at the fastball, would be 95 to 100 miles per hour. I don't know what that's in km. I can look that up really quickly. Hold on.
And what's the
So 100
distance
miles
between
per hour.
I'm doing the same. Yeah.
and what would be the distance?
160.
Oh, wow.
160. Yeah.
And what would be the distance between the mound to the home plate?
Ooh, that's a good question. I actually don't know the exact. I gotta Google that if you don't mind me doing that.
So, because why I'm asking is because in cricket, I'm not sure if you are aware, the average speed of a bowler, like a fast bowler, ranges around, you said 160 kilometers per hour. So that would be around 140 in cricket, but it's 22 yards between let's say the bowling crease to when the ball actually arrives at the batsman.
So baseball seems to be like 60 feet and 6 inches.
Yep.
I think it's yeah. Mine's also from Googling. I definitely did not
Yeah.
know this on the top of my
No,
head.
no.
So 60 feet would be how many yards? I have no idea.
Once I
I-
60.
I think I have to Google that again.
No, because
Yeah, I was going to
this
do the
is
exact same. So it's
important.
about 20 yards.
Okay, so
20 yards,
so
20
this
yards.
is very important because that draws a lot of similarities between the two sports. It's again another British versus American sort of thing going on
Yeah.
here. So it's not that
Any
different.
idea? Would anyone have any idea what's the fastest ball bowled in cricket?
Sean Tate, 160. No, Mitchell Stark, 160. I don't know, but it was 160.
No, I think Sean Tate bowled 160 plus once.
Yeah,
Like there's
exactly.
Would be the one in baseball?
It's
Yeah,
faster
yeah,
in
yeah.
baseball. He said the average speed is around 100 miles per hour for a fastball.
Yeah, well, they have to be really good, but yeah. And well, I actually don't know too specific about cricket, but I think the thing that may be distinguished between cricket and baseball is, I could be wrong, is baseball there's different kinds of balls you can throw. I don't know if are there curve balls in cricket
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well? Oh,
we
they
have-
are. Okay, that's interesting.
So we have spin bowling. So that and the spinners can pretty much do anything. They'll take the ball away from the batsman. They'll take it into the batsman. They'll bowl such a slow delivery, which is like the fork ball in a way. So a lot of similarities, and that's why I asked you all these questions because, like you said, Leo, I think that backs up what you said, that they can be supportive or supplement each other rather than hampering each other in the US. So yeah.
It is funny again, all from just Googling right now. So the fastest, and Leo, correct me if I'm way off base here if I've not done my Googling correctly, but the fastest base MLB pitch seems to be about 108 miles per hour, the fastest one, which is Nolan Ryan. And that's about 173.8. And the cricket's fast, I think, is around like 161.3. So definitely fast. The fastest of MLB is definitely the faster than the fastest of cricket, and probably the pitching also makes probably it makes a big difference in cricket. The fact that it hits the ground versus baseball, it's straight on.
But Krishnan, to be fair, the speed is recorded not at the speed at which it arrives at the batsman. It's recorded when the ball is released. So
That's fair. That's fair. Then that's
It's
fair.
so different. The action is so different. I think for baseball, the ball, like to throw the ball, would be like easy as compared to cricket in terms of speed, because the action is very different. In cricket, your hand has to go over your head, but in baseball, it's from the side.
Yeah, you
Right.
can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
no, but
So
Shubham-
by the way,
exactly. Go ahead.
so
Yeah.
I'm going to take. So every Indian knows how to bowl a ball. Like every Indian is just. But you should see these ceremonial pitches by celebrities and the MLB games. Some of the most horrible throws I've ever seen of anything. Like I don't
Some
know,
of them don't make it. Some of them don't make it.
forget making it. Okay, making it is like I think a lot of people would find it difficult to, uh, have a fastball bowled over 22 yards. It's slightly difficult. I'll be honest. It's not the easiest thing to do, but yeah, you can just roll one arm over and bowl, maybe shorten the pitch. But I think throwing directly to home plate is kind of more difficult because you don't have any. You're not targeting the ground. There's no angle. You're not putting it at an angle onto the ground, which is going to hit the stumps, so to say. But I just
And
from what I've observed, that the celebrity pitches, that the ceremonial pitches at the beginning of MLB games, I assume there's something happening over there which we are not aware of, because every person I know can bowl a cricket ball.
check out Akon's, not Akon, sorry, 50 Cent ceremonial pitch. It is horrendous. It's all over the place. And I think, like you said, Gui, the margin for error is so small in baseball, right? It's such a small area that you need to hit in for it to be a, I guess, valid ball. Unless of course someone swings at it. But the margin for error is so tiny. As compared to cricket, where there's a lot more space. But
Unless you are Lasit Malinga, Krishnan, then I think Lasit Malinga is literally the only, you know, for a fact that he can go into baseball and be successful as a pitcher.
Leo, he's the one cricketer who bowls like this. Every other cricketer has to kind of go above their head. And there's one cricketer who bowls kind of from the side, which is
his
very
nickname
unique.
is the
You don't
Slinger.
see that at all.
The slinger.
Yeah,
That's
because
awesome.
he
I always
literally
like those
swings the
pitchers,
ball.
the weird ones.
Oh,
So
he's.
just
I think he's the epitome of weird when it comes to like talking about weird. I think he's at the epitome of it when it comes to cricketers. So.
also the epitome of hitting like a very small target, because he's known for bowling exactly at the batsman's feet. So it's kind of like on command. Like, you want him to do it, like if he wants to do it, it's called a yorker in cricket. I don't know why I'm saying this.
No, it's cool. It's cool.
Leo plays
The point
cricket,
is,
so
like,
this is handy for him.
Yeah. Also, just wanted to clarify. Is there a rule with regards to pitching that the release of the ball has to be above your shoulder or something like that? No, right?
I don't think rules in baseball get weirdly complicated at some points, but I don't think so. You can throw it above your head or like next to your ear. You can throw it sidearm. Some people throw it underhand. Like you can do. Not a lot of people do underhand, but you can do basically whatever you want, I think, at that point.
Yeah, one guy bowled a very famous underarm delivery in cricket, and they've not heard the end of it ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's hard. And that goes like 100 like
No,
106.
no.
Oh,
The purpose of that ball
was probably
different.
not even 50 miles per hour.
Oh,
that
wow.
was probably not even 50 miles per hour.
So I actually wanted to ask a question for cricket. So in baseball, there's so much emphasis on pitching, right? Where the batters honestly can't hit it. And out of 10 times, if a batter can hit it 3 times, he's considered really good, almost the MVP. Is it a similar story in cricket as well, where no one can hit the ball?
No, it's a lot more favoriting. It's a lot more offensively favored.
See,
I would argue
I think
that baseball's almost
that's the key difference between, and which makes cricket honestly more enjoyable to watch for like a tax standpoint.
About a decade and a half ago, 220 or 230 runs in 50 overs, it's a good score. Now, if you're scoring 230, it's a low score in 50 overs. You need to be closer to 300 for it to be, a challenging total for the other team to match. So the rules have also, tumbled over in a sense to help achieve a higher batting total, because that's what kind of makes the game more exciting. Like, you need to score more runs, so you are forced to hit more.
And I would argue, the equivalent of a home run in cricket, which is like a 6 in a sense, right? In probably 300 pitches, I would argue having 15 home runs is not shocking. It's not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Per
it
game.
wouldn't be per game. Yeah, in 300 pitches, like having 15 would not be that crazy, I don't think. It's definitely a lot easier. And it kind of goes to the fact that because it has to hit the ground, like Mazhar was saying, the release might be really quick, even for the quick bowlers. The release might be really quick, But by the time it's getting to you, it's pitching, it's massively slowing down, and the bat is also just wider, right? It's a flat bat as compared
Yeah,
to like,
I remember the
yeah.
right.
Yeah, so there's actually more to that as well. I was just thinking about it now that you brought it up. Apart from all of this, also, it's the number of chances that a batsman has in cricket as compared to baseball. In baseball, I mean, if you are lucky, you'll get balls thrown at you, and then you'll get 4 balls, and then you get a walk. So you get a
Right.
free run anyway. In cricket, you miss the ball, there's no penalty for the batsman. Unless you
Unless it
actually
hits the
unless
thing, yeah.
unless it
Yep.
hits the stumps that we have, or maybe if the batsman actually hits it with his gloves or his bat, and then it's caught directly by a fielder. uh, I mean, so there's just so many more chances for a batsman in cricket than there is in baseball. And also, the another key difference is that there's a rotation basis for the batsman. So like you never really out in baseball. So as long as, I mean, it's 3 outs for the inning, but that same batsman can come back and play in the next inning once that entire rotation changes. In cricket, you're out. Once you're out, you're out. So there's no getting back. So that's another major difference.
That's
between
And
yeah,
also,
that's extremely. I think that's where like strategies in baseball and cricket just start diverging, which makes it really interesting. And I'm sure, like, I even think this whole spring and summer, like baseball cricket thing might even work because of the difference. And I'm sure a lot of baseball players, they're just tired of striking out, or they just want to play cricket. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
But
a good way
yeah,
to release some stress as well. And I genuinely think it would be beneficial for batters in baseball as well, because it could definitely improve their potential slugging
yeah,
averages
for
for
sure.
sure. Shubham?
That's cool. And yeah, just hearing that, like the way I watch baseball now and when I watch cricket, would be significantly different now because I feel like baseball is such a defensive sport. The pitcher technically only has 4 balls or 3 strikes, so he has to be each pitch carries there's more pressure in each pitch, and the margin of error is so high because the next batter might not even hit. Um, while in cricket, it's more offense, offense, offense. But if you're ever out, you're out of the game. Which that's cool. That's that's scary. If I feel like if a cricket player is ever out, their fans hate him for a week or something.
Oh,
If they don't score too much, yeah, it's a
a week. You've
tough.
been kind, Leo. You've been kind. A week. I'm not so nice. I will be no, like, I genuinely, I myself don't cut a player so much slack because the demands are just so high. And I guess it's very similar in terms of Indians demanding performances from their cricket players is like maybe the Canadian ice hockey team demanding a gold every
Mm,
time they go out there and play as well. So.
gotcha.
Or the
So
US basketball team.
yeah,
Oh,
U.S. basketball,
I don't think
U.S.
that's a
football.
demand. I think that's a given. If you don't manage to do that, then what are you even doing there? It's like, it's one of those.
No, I was gonna say,
So,
Leo, thank you so much. I think the moment we start going to cricket, we can completely go for hours and hours and hours on that comparison. We want to get credit for if anything happens in terms of a summer cricket league. We want to get credit for it and some payment,
for
by the way,
sure.
whoever's listening. But with that, Leo, thank you so much for coming on. Really fun to discuss sports that we know so little about and really want to expand our mind and understanding of these sports. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for listening. If you did like this episode, do like, share, subscribe, and leave in a comment what other sports you want us to cover. If there are any other things that you'd like for us to take on, we're always willing to learn more about some sport and bring it to our broader audience. With that, thank you so much. Stay tuned for more episodes weekly, and stay safe. Take care. Thanks.